There is a new trial date for the Jordan Davis murder case, and another juror is now talking about what happened in that jury room.
The victim was a 17-year-old teenager that should have his whole life in front of him. That's the victim.
I believe prosecutors and the Sheriff's Association are in favor of the former law's.
Florida State Attorney Angela Corey said she would retry the case.
We do believe there should be a duty to retreat.
He had no duty to retreat.
Stand your ground, the principle.
It was part of closing arguments. It was part of the jury instructions.
Reopening wounds surrounding Florida's stand your ground law.
Something that's become sort of a matter of confusion over this case.
We do believe there should be a duty to retreat.
You didn't think Michael Dunn had to kill Jordan Davis?
I don't believe so.
I just wanted to bring justice to whoever it was.
Stand your ground is part of the collective consciousness now in Florida and in the 26 other stand your ground states.
Even if we don't ever receive the verdict for Jordan, he will pay because he's going to spend the rest of his life in jail. And I feel sorry for him for that.
Today, prosecutors announced that Michael Dunn will be retried for the first-degree murder of Jordan Davis in May. And today, we heard from a second member of the jury, juror number 8, 21-year-old Krishuna Miles, who says she thinks Michael Dunn is a good guy, but she also thinks he is guilty of murder.
I honestly think he was a good guy. I think he's a good guy. I don't think he hates everybody. I don't think he walks around wanting to shoot everybody. I think that he made bad decisions.
The first juror to speak, juror number 4, known only as Valerie, says race was not a factor in their deliberations.
For a lot of folk in America, they would say, white man shoots and kills a 17-year-old black boy. How could it not be about race on some level?
Sitting in that room, it was never presented that way. We looked at it as a bad situation where teenagers were together and words were spoken and lines were crossed.
And here's what juror number 8 said about race.
I just want everybody to understand that everybody's making this a white and black thing, and it's not. In our decision-making process, nobody brought up not one race. Never. It was never brought up. I never once thought about, oh, this was a black kid, this was a white guy. Because that wasn't the case.
So the people who say, you know, here's another white guy who got away with shooting and killing a black kid, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that they really should knowledge themselves on the law.
Here's how both jurors described the scene inside that deliberation room.
There were reports that there was yelling heard coming from the deliberation room. What was that about? You did some of the yelling.
Yes. At one point, we were all trying to get our point across.
Screaming?
Oh, yes, sir.
Profanity?
Oh, yes, sir.
People were passionate about their position.
Oh, yes, sir.
What was it like inside that deliberation room?
It was wild.
Wild as?
Like, it was shouting. It was a lot of yelling.
Both jurors believe Michael Dunn is guilty of murder, but for different reasons.
When you went to the deliberating room, you thought Michael Dunn was guilty?
Yes, sir.
Of killing a 17-year-old boy?
Yes, sir.
What convinced you of that?
To me, it was unnecessary.
You didn't think Michael Dunn had to kill Jordan Davis?
I don't believe so.
I really think he's guilty of murder, but not the guilty as charged.
First degree. You don't think he's guilty of first degree?
I think he's guilty of second degree. I was convinced, I was honestly convinced that he was in self-defense until he chased the car down and started shooting more. That's where my decision-making process comes. Well, even if initially you didn't have an opportunity to take yourself out of the situation, to stop running behind the car and shooting more, that's where you completely push your limit.
Last night on this program, we heard Michael Dunn say that he is the victim in this case.
You know, I was thinking about this today, and I was like, I'm the victim here. I was the one that was being preyed upon, and I fought back.
One question suggested by the audience last night on this program to Jordan Davis's parents was, what would you want to say to Michael Dunn if you had the chance?
I've thought many, many times before this, if I ever got the opportunity to speak to him, what would I say? And what I would say to him is that not only did you take Jordan's life, but you took my future. No, I won't have grandchildren. I will never have a daughter-in-law. I will never have all of those things that you see in your children as your legacy. I don't have those things anymore. But what he'll need to understand is that in some way, shape, or form, he will pay. He will pay. Even if we don't ever receive the verdict for Jordan, he will pay because he's going to spend the rest of his life in jail. And I feel sorry for him for that.
Joining me now, Washington Post columnist and MSNBC contributor Eugene Robinson and Mark Thompson, host of Make It Plain on Sirius XM Radio. Eugene, there's a lot to react to there in the new revelations from jurors and what, in the last 24 hours, what the parents have been saying. Just your thoughts, Gene.
Well, you know, this is another one of those heartbreaking situations, and if you stand back from this case, you can say that the parents of Jordan Davis at least got a measure of justice from this trial. I don't understand what the jurors are saying exactly. I mean, the two jurors, their accounts don't really jibe with each other, except that there was a lot of yelling, and I frankly don't understand that there was no thought even of race in that jury room, given the obvious context. And one wonders kind of what world these people were living in. I'm just tired of this. I'm tired of funerals and trials, Lawrence, and you know, I want this not to happen. And I want us to at some point focus on that and not focus on the grinding wheels of justice, which sometimes work and sometimes don't, but they don't even come into play until it's too late, until assumptions have been made like the ones Michael Dunn made that day, and shots are fired, and a mother is crying over another casket.
Mark Thompson, you've been following this case on a daily basis on your radio show. And to both of you tonight, please feel free to ignore my questions and make whatever points you feel compelled to make. But Mark, I especially want to hear what your reaction is to what we've been hearing over the last day from both the now two jurors speaking and the parents.
If the jurors are saying that race was not a factor in their decision of guilty or innocent, I can probably buy that. You know, that really shouldn't enter into the decision making. But to deny, and I'm not sure they're denying that now, that this case was somehow racially charged or racially motivated. The jurors did not, I don't think, have the benefit of the letters we saw, the phone calls we heard from Michael Dunn. I do think that Michael Dunn saw a group of young black men and assumed, again, existentially, that they have guns. Black men just have guns automatically, listen to loud rap music. And that is where he imagined this threat. So I do think that the race was there. Race was a factor in his decision-making and in this tragedy. I don't know how, though, anyone could have watched your show last night, Lawrence, and not have had their hearts broken, to use Gene's words. To hear a mother describe the loss of her own future. This is ridiculous and senseless, and we've got to do something about it. Again, this culture that exists in Florida around stand your ground. See, those very words almost, you know, justify some of these self-defense trials. As I said the other day, if it was truly a stand your ground case, there would have been a jury. They would have pursued it before a judge, and a judge would have upheld the stand your ground defense. And, you know, one of the jurors said that people need to educate themselves about the law. What I'm finding, and you mentioned my show, I mean, people call every night. People really don't understand
what premeditation means, Lawrence and Gene. They think that you have to plan something 2 or 3 weeks in advance. Right. We really need to educate more people on what premeditation means, number one, and also that, you know, if there is a jury trial in a self-defense case, that means that stand your ground may not have been truly applicable, because if it was, a judge would have granted it in the first place. And, you know, jurors may not have known that. So I think it's necessary all the way around for jurors picked for these cases to be more informed, and for even that language, that law and that language needs to be done away with so that there can be more objectivity when it comes to cases like this.
Well, Angela Corey agrees with you completely on that now. The prosecutor said today that she wants to get rid of this stand your ground law. She blames the verdict, the hung jury portion of the verdict, on the stand your ground language that is inside all of judges' jury instructions on self-defense in Florida. And Eugene, it's in there whether they are pleading a stand your ground case or not.
Exactly. So this is a huge boon to the defense in these cases, because they don't have to rigorously prove that it's a stand your ground law. They get the benefits of the law anyhow, because it's in the jury instructions. And, you know, the last thing the jury hears before they go in the jury room is language straight from the stand your ground law. And Florida's law is written so incredibly broadly that it basically gives you license to use deadly force if you have any belief that you're threatened. And, you know, so again, Mr. Dunn claimed that he thought he saw a shotgun, or he claims he saw one. Nobody ever found any shotgun because there wasn't one there. But if, you know, a jury could say, well, gee, he thought he saw a gun and therefore he felt threatened and therefore we have to acquit him. And apparently several jurors did follow that logic, which isn't the way the law is supposed to work according to Florida authorities, but it's the way it's working.
Well, I think we heard that jury confusion in juror number 8 tonight when she said, if you don't understand how we came out this way, then you need to educate yourselves on the law. And I think what she's talking about there is you have to listen to what we listened to from that judge. Before we go, I just want to play one thing that Ron Davis said last night when we presented him the audio tape of Michael Dunn claiming to be the victim. Let's listen to this.
Michael Dunn should understand that the victim was the one that had a bullet go through his lungs, a bullet tear his aorta. The victim is the one that was choking on his own blood and was gasping for air. The victim was a 17-year-old teenager that should have his whole life in front of him, that was seeing his life go away in seconds. And he probably was so fearful, and his friends were looking on, watching their best friend die in a moment of seconds. That's the victim.
Gentlemen, we're out of time for this segment tonight, but I did want Ron Davis to get the last word in it. I'm sure you'll understand. Eugene Robinson and Mark Thompson, thank you both very much for joining me tonight.